Hi, in this video I'm going to show you how to open up and disconnect a music and sound model N350 radio intercom master station. To do this, you're going to need a few things. You're going to need a Phillips screwdriver. You're going to need a regular size flat bladed screwdriver. You're going to need some masking tape. Doesn't have to be green, could be blue. It'll be fine. Some other type of tape. In this case, I'm using some green electrical tape because that's what I have on the workbench, and a Sharpie or a pen or something to write with because we're going to be writing on some of the tape. Removing an N350 is mostly straightforward, but can be a little messy sometimes because of the way the set is designed, and we'll get more into that as we go along. This particular N350, black and gold, the quintessential 1980s look, also has the optional oak wood frame around it, which is another layer of uninstallation work you have to do. So the first thing we're going to do is remove the two screws that hold it to the wall. There's one screw here and one screw here. In this particular installation, the installer used white screws for some unknown reason, and they are like all music and sound screws. When you have the wood frame, the screws are extra long because the frame moves the set out from the face of the wall somewhat, so there's more and more unscrewing that you have to do. So I've got that one most of the way out. Of course, this is easier to do if you're not standing off to the side, so you don't block the camera. Now, you might be tempted to use a cordless screwdriver. The risk you run when you do that is if your screwdriver tip in the cordless screwdriver or drill slips, you could round out the Phillips head, and then you're going to have a hard time getting the screw out. So that's your risk. So I've got them out now. We'll take the screws out. You need to put the screws somewhere safe, because if you don't, you're going to lose them, and then when it's time to put the set back in, what are you going to do? So, as we normally do around here, I'm going to take my little metal cup, put the screws in the cup so I don't lose them. If you don't have a metal cup, you can put them in a little plastic bag. If you don't have a bag like this, you can use a Ziploc sandwich bag. That works well too. If you put the screws in a bag, odds are, if they fall on the floor, you're going to be able to find them because the bag is big. And also, you're not going to throw away a bag with screws in it, are you? I don't think so. All right, so we've got the screws out and the set's loose on the wall. So what we're going to do is we're going to tip it out some and hold it in place. And on the back of the set is this green support strap, and there's a hook in the top of the wall housing. We're going to hook it, and it's going to hang on the green strap to give it some support. Now you have an overhead view of the back of the N350 master station. You can see the wall housing, the metal box in the wall behind it. On this side of the metal box is the low voltage transformer that powers it. On this side is the chime module. This is a C3 chime module, which is a 1 or 3 note chime module. And then you have this the technical term for it is mess of wires that come out of the top of the wall housing and are connected to the back of the master station. And over here you have the AM and FM antennas. One of the things that I should have told you to do before we unscrewed it off the wall is you need to turn the circuit breaker off that powers the system, because one of the things we have to do is unplug the N350 from the low voltage transformer. Now, music and sound transformers, what's behind the metal bracket here, have built inside of them fuses. And sometimes when you unplug this, or later on when you go to put this back in and you plug it back in, you will shock the fuse and blow it. And when you blow the fuse, the transformer stops providing power for the master station and nothing's going to work. So I'm going to reach back here where it's plugged in, and I'm going to turn it off. Listen for the click. Okay, now the system is turned off and we can safely unplug the transformer. It's a multi-pin plug, and it simply plugs into the socket right here. It's indexed, so it only can go back in one way. You can't put it in upside down or sideways. It only fits one way. So we've done that. That can go out of the way. Now, You can label this if you want to, and that's not a bad idea if you're only ever going to do this once, and that's where your green tape comes in. So you take a little piece of green tape and you can wrap it around the wire, and then you use your Sharpie and you can write on it what it is. In this case, I'm going to write transformer. I'm just going to write trans because I'm a professional and I know what trans stands for. The other thing you can do, which I highly recommend, is use your phone and take some pictures of all of this before you take it apart so you have an idea what it looked like. Since the transformer cable and connector is the only thing in the set like it, you might get by without labeling it, but you might want to anyway. So I'm just going to coil this up here a little bit to keep it out of the way. Let it hang down there. And now we're going to move on to the next step, which is disconnecting the antenna. The antenna connections are here on the back of the tuner assembly, and actually there's a label on here. It says model 300-350 cable hookup, and it shows the diagram of how the wiring is supposed to be connected. Here you can see model 300/350 cable hookup. It shows all reds, blacks, and whites, and it shows here's the red wires, and they go down to a terminal post here, and all the black wires go down to the black terminal post, and all the white wires go down to the white terminal post, and the green wires each come over and get connected individually to one of the green screws, which there are 10 of altogether. Down here we have door cable, door black, and that's connected to its screw, and I'll show you all this on the back of the set. And here we have antenna, and we have FM 300 ohm dipole, which is here, and down here we have AM orange. So it's nice that they give you this, although if you're not really super familiar with this kind of equipment, a lot of this may be Greek to you and it doesn't really make any sense. That's why I'm making the video. Since we're down on this end of the set right now, let's go ahead and unhook the two antennas. So here we have the FM dipole antenna, this flat twin lead. It's kind of a whitish translucent color, and it's connected to the two screws here, which correspond with the two screws on the label. So let's go ahead and loosen the screws. That's just where you use your flat screwdriver. Just back them off a little bit. Unhook the wires from underneath the screw, and the antenna comes loose. Again, this is an opportunity to be organized. You can take some of your green tape and you can wrap it around the antenna, and then use your Sharpie, and you can write, I would just write FM on it, or you can write on it whatever you want to that makes sense to you, since you're the one that's going to be putting all this back together, so label it as you want. Then we have the blue wire. Now, in this installation, the installer used a blue antenna wire instead of an orange wire here. The color of the wire doesn't matter, it's just a wire. So we'll go ahead and loosen the screw here. We'll take the AM antenna off of its screw. And again, we'll take a piece of tape and we'll fold it over the wire, and we'll take our Sharpie and I'm going to write AM. Now we know that's the AM antenna. When we opened up the set, we talked about how in the wall housing on the left-hand side is the Chime module. See, it says here Chime module C3. Coming out of the bottom of the Chime module bracket, let's get our antennas out of the way. And we'll move these wires out of the way. And this is a fairly typical installation. This particular installation has 5 remote stations plus a door speaker. So we have some wires. If you have 3 remote stations, you'll have less wires. If you have 10, you'll have a lot more wires. So coming out of the bottom of the Chime module bracket are these 4 colored wires. We have orange, red, black, and white. And they come out of the bottom of the bracket down here. And if you follow them down to the back of the intercom right here, there's a sort of a reddish colored plug on the ends of the cable, and on the circuit board next to the plug it actually says, on a green label, it says Chime plug. So guess what gets plugged in there? Oh, the Chime module. Now this connector just pulls straight up and it comes off. It is indexed, so when it's time to put it back on, you can't really plug it in backwards. It only fits one way. So now the Chime module is uninstalled. And we're gonna, for right now, we're gonna coil up the wires a little bit to get them out of the way. At this point, we're about halfway done. All right, now we're on the right-hand side of the set. And if you look carefully, you can see here's the back of the speaker cone. This is a magnet and your screwdriver wants to stick to it a little bit. That's just as a reference point. And you'll see here that here, as they showed on the wiring label on the back of the tuner, here's the red binding post that has all the red wires connected to it. Here's the black binding post that has all the black wires connected to it. Here's the white binding post with all the white wires connected to it. This is the black wire from the door speaker. And then down here, buried underneath some of the wires to some degree, are the 10 green screws. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 5 more on the bottom row for a total of 10. Since this installation has 5 remote speakers, not counting the door station, there are 5 green wires. This is the part, remember I told you in the beginning, this is not that complicated, but it tends to be kind of messy. Well, that's because when you have terminations like this, where you have a bunch of wires here, red wires, a bunch of black wires here, a bunch of white wires, and they're all pushed into these binding posts. When you loosen the screw on the binding post and take these out, they're all going to want to go like this and come apart. And that makes it difficult for people because you've got all of these loose wires and people freak out and don't know what to do. This is where your green tape, this is electrical tape or something like this. You can use the green masking tape, but you need some kind of tape to hold these together. And here's how we're going to do this. We're going to start with the red one. Use your flat screwdriver and you put it in the slot of the screw in the middle of the binding post and you back it off some. Don't take it out all the way. And then you grab your red wires and pull them out as a bunch out of the binding post. And what I do at this point is take the ends of the wires and very lightly twist them together. Now, your fingers are not going to be super strong enough to really twist them together really super well. So this is when you take a little bit of, in this case, green electrical tape, and we're going to wrap it around the red bundle of wires like this. So now all of the bare ends of the wires are still together and the insulated part of the wire, the part with the red on it, they're all held together. So now we have a nice neat bundle of wires that has a tendency to want to stay together. And that's a good thing because remember, at some point you have to hook all this back up. So the neater you do it now, the better off you're going to be later on. So we've done the reds. Now we're going to do exactly the same thing with the blacks. I'm going to take it out from the binding post. I'm going to twist them together with my fingers just a little bit. If your fingers aren't really super good at twisting the wires, I suppose you could use a pair of pliers or some other tool that would work for you. That's up to you. And then we're going to take a little more green electrical tape and wrap it around the black insulated part of the wires. And now we have a nice, neat black bundle. And now we're going to do the same thing with the white. Now, one thing to be aware of. Installers have a really bad habit of having the wires come out of the wall that connect to the back of the master station not be extra long. Sometimes they're just barely long enough. And when they're connected to the binding post, they would have had to lift the set up some to get the wires into the binding post and then tighten it down. When you let the set go again, it kind of leans down on the wall. And in a sense, the wires, in this case, the white wires, are adding support to the master station. It's not the best way to do it, but the biggest problem is with this green support strap that the Music and Sound used, and it's not a really great design, and I don't really care for it, but that's the way it's made, so you got to deal with it. If you think it's going to be a problem for you, you can have a helper hold the set up while you disconnect it, or if it's like in your kitchen, and it's above the counter, you can get a cardboard box to put under it to hold it up or something like that. So we'll take all the white wires out of the white binding post. Again, we're going to twist them together a little bit. And then we're going to take our green tape and we're going to wrap it around it and make a nice neat bundle. So now our red wires, our black wires, and our white wires have been disconnected, and they're organized into nice, neat little bundles that want to stay together, and that makes your life easier. The next thing we're going to do is we need to disconnect the one black wire for your door station. Now, if your house has 2 door stations, there will be 2 wires under this screw, both black. If you have 3, guess what? There'll be 3 black wires. Doesn't matter how many wires there are, it's just a matter that you keep it organized. And the best way to do that is loosen the screw, disconnect the wire, and now we're back to using our green masking tape and wrap it around the wire so you remember what it's for, and then we're going to write door black. Just like over here where it says door black over there on the label that you can't see right now. So we'll put that out of the way. All right, at this point, we're about 80% done. The hardest parts are done, I think. The last thing we have to do is we have to disconnect our 5 green wires. So these are the top screws, so it's screws 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 have wires. Bottom row 6 through 10, no wires because it's a smaller installation. These screws, and we're going to deal with the top row, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, correspond to the switches on the front of the master station that are labeled 1 through 10. So this green wire is connected to switch 1, this green wire is connected to switch 2, switch 3, switch 4, switch 5. The order that these green wires are connected is the order of the speakers throughout your house in association with the switches on the front of the unit. So if number 1 switch has always been the master bedroom, and number 2 has always been the master bathroom, and number 3 has always been bedroom number 2, and then bedroom number 3, and then say laundry room or something like that, when you put these back on, you want to put them back in the same order. If you just randomly disconnect them without marking them somehow, when you put them back on, all of a sudden it's going to be laundry room, master bathroom, bedroom 3, master, it's going to be a jumble, and people don't like that. This is one of those kind of things that when you do a service call and you take a system out, you have to mark and label things, because otherwise the lady's going to call you after you put it back in and say, hey, how come number 2 was always the laundry room and now it's the garage? And then you got to go back. So you don't want to do that. So there are 2 ways to do this. You can take your green masking tape like we've been doing, and you can disconnect, and I suggest you start with number 1 because that obviously makes sense, and disconnect the green wire and put a piece of masking tape on it. In fact, I'm going to put a smaller piece because it doesn't need to be quite that big, so you can wrap that around it, and then you take your Sharpie and you write 1 because that's screw number 1. Now, there's another way to do it. When I would do service calls, I'm not a big masking tape in people's houses kind of guy. So what I would do is I would take my Sharpie and I would make a hash mark on the wire. So what's a hash mark? Hash mark is a line. So I'm going to take this green tape off, like this. And I'm going to put the wire back under the screw for a second, like it was always there. And before you disconnect any wires, so this is wire number 1, so you make 1 hash mark, 1 little mark. This is wire number 2, so we're going to make 2 hash marks. And this is 3, so guess how many hash marks we're going to make? Wait for it. Oh, I think it would be 3. And then we have 4, and then this one is 5, like that. Now, we've labeled the wires, we don't have a big wad of masking tape inside the wall, and we know which one is which. The Sharpies dry really fast, so that's not a problem. And while they're drying just a little bit, we can loosen the screws. Like that. And now we can disconnect the wires. The thing with the hash marks on the wires, for me and my company, was something that everybody that ever worked for me learned. Part of the idea of standardizing is that everybody knows we do it this way, Everybody understands what the hash marks are for, and anyone can go back and put this set back in and understand what this means. So standardizing is a good thing. Don't be all over the place with how you do things. Be consistent because it makes your life easier. Once we've done that, all of the wiring now from the remote speakers has been disconnected, and you can carefully take it and sort of roll it up and put it back into the wall housing to get it out of the way. Now our master station is completely disconnected and we get to lift it out of the wall. Before we lift it out of the wall, one last small thing to do. We backed off or loosened a bunch of screws. We loosened the screws for the antenna. We loosened the screws on the binding post, the door speaker, black wire, and the 5 screws for the green wires from the remote stations. If you're going to be packing this up and sending it somewhere to have it repaired, it's a really, really good idea to lightly tighten back down the screws, especially the screws on the 3 binding posts, because they have a really bad habit of being jostled around during shipping and falling out. And it's not the kind of thing where you could just run down to your local hardware store and buy some, because it doesn't work that way. They're specific to that. I'm sure they exist in the world somewhere to buy, but it's better if you don't lose them in the first place. And what did that take me? Like less than a minute to tighten all the screws down? So it's not a big deal. All right, now we're ready. So what we're going to do is we're going to lift it up a little bit. We're going to unhook the green support strap from the top of the wall housing, and the set comes out, and now it's loose and can be shipped or whatever. You might think that you're done, but we have one more thing to do. The one more thing to do is we're going to send the Chime module with the master station, because the Chime module, this Chime module is from December 1993. That makes it 31 years old. And there are electronic components in the Chime module that sometimes will fail and then it won't work correctly. Also, sometimes Chime modules fail and will cause what seem to be bigger problems with the master station itself. And if you're going to go through the trouble to send the master station to have it looked at or repaired, it's not that much more to take the Chime module out and send it along with it. That way you get it all covered the first time. The Chime module bracket is held on the side here with 2 screws, and that's where you use your Phillips screwdriver, and you simply loosen the screws like this. And once you've got the screws out, what are you going to do with them? Because you're going to need them to put the Chime module back in. You're going to get your plastic bag, and you're going to put the screws in the plastic bag and keep it with everything else, so when you get the set back, you can put it back in. Once you've taken the screws out, the Chime module comes out of the wall housing like this. There are 2 wires connected to it. Odds are those wires will be orange and yellow. The orange wire goes on the screw that's common, and the yellow wire will be connected either to the 3 notes screw or the 1 notes screw. There's only 3 choices. In this case, it's common and 3 notes. You can label the wires if you want to. You can put a little dot in the little round circles to remind you that's where they were. You can take a picture of it, but at this point, I think you get the idea. So we're going to loosen the 2 screws like this. Take out the wires, put that down there, and then we'll carefully, for the time being, just coil the wires back up in the wall housing to keep them out of the way as much as you can, and you're all set. Now remember, we turned the circuit breaker off to shut the transformer off when we unplugged it. Odds are your master station is in your sort of kitchen or kitchen eating area, and it may have turned off some of the wall outlets and things in your kitchen, which you're not going to want to leave that way. You can turn the circuit breaker back on at this point. It's totally safe. Nobody's going to come here and stick things in the plug, and it's only 16 volts anyway, so it doesn't really matter. So now you're all set. That's how you open up, disconnect, and remove a Music and Sound model N350 master station along with its Chime module. Oh look, That's the back. See, that's what's on the back of a chime module. Hope you found this interesting, and perhaps for someone it will be helpful. If it is, give it a thumbs up on YouTube because that helps us just a little bit. There'll be a banner right here that shows you how to subscribe. Go to our YouTube homepage, click on the bell, and when you click on the bell, click on it to receive all notifications. And every time we post a new video, you'll get a notification and you can watch it. That's all for today. See you on the next video.